Grimwick the Demon Cat. Book 3, The Tournament. Chapter 15, The Games Begin. Deep below the main castle of Cragstone, the participants gathered in a chamber, all waiting with anticipation of what their first challenge would be. A wooden stage leaned against the facade of the chamber. There were roughly 80 students jostling side by side together in the enclosed space. Though Vine made it clear many would end up in the infirmary, most of the first-year mages signed up. Norbert took his usual position at the back of the crowd, but Grimwick wanted to see, so he sat on Norbert's shoulders and overlooked the crowd. Normally Norbert would be in detention at this time, but since he signed up for the tournament, Vine agreed that he could go back to his detention once the assembly got out. Up on the raised platform were 5 faculty members. 2 of them Norbert recognized. It was Nickel and Vine. The other 3 he'd only seen passing in the halls. It was the first time they'd seen Professor Nickel since their near-death experience in the crypts. He was leaning on crutches, but he was smiling. Vine raised her hand and the group hushed. Good evening, students. I'm surprised so many of you signed up for this rigorous challenge. The first year's tournament will take place over several stages and will culminate in a tournament of combat between the top 8 students. Dignitaries will be present for the final round, and therefore we must weed out the fluff. Myself and the other faculty have determined that 2 rounds should suffice to whittle the 87 entrants down to a select 8. The first challenge will be to break into a vault. It will be padlocked with a lock crafted with rare components of metals. By sundown tomorrow night, you must craft a potion or a tool that allows you to get past the lock and break into the vault. Those who can will move on. Those who can't will be removed from the tournament. The crowd began to murmur. They thought this was going to be a combat tournament, not a school assignment. Vine barked, "To be called a mage, you must train your brain as well as your spells. Now, dilly-dally no longer. The clock starts now." She waved her hand and portals appeared overhead and leaflets began to float down. Students began to fight and scramble over the papers. Grimwick jumped off of Norbert's head and snatched one of the papers out of the air. Another student tried to take it away from Grimwick, so he bit their hand. Vine seemed amused by the squabbling she caused. Over the crowd, she yelled, "Just as in life, there are many ways to get past the lock. So you can melt it or you can make a key. Any method is valid as long as you can get the treasure behind the door. Submissions are due by tomorrow's sunset, 24 hours. The leaflet has every information you need. Late submissions will be met with disqualification, and when you return your submission, you will be given a time in which to come back the following day. Once you are taken to the vault, you will have 2 minutes to break in." Norbert picked up Grimwick before he could bite anyone else, and Grimwick still clutched to the pamphlet. Other students were tugging at the sheets and started to wrestle with one another, not realizing there were many more on the ground. Grimwick thought about stealing a few extra ones so the students didn't have them, but he was stuck in Norbert's embrace. And Vine echoed over the crowd, "Best of luck, students. And Norbert, get back to your detention." Norbert looked at the listed components on the leaflet. A lock made of mithril composite, troll nails, and stardust. A door made of rigid steel, hexacomb refractors, and emerald residue. I don't know anything about this stuff. Have we studied any of it yet? Grimwick looked at the leaflet for the 16th time. None of these were in Norbert's books. How should I know? We sleep through half of your classes. And you aren't in any academic electives or advanced classes. You're just barely in the basic stuff. Vine knew this and was probably looking for academic overachievers. "Oh man, we're out already?" Norbert moaned. "No, we aren't. Luckily for you, I'm a bit of an explosive expert. I just don't know all the properties in this realm, but luckily, we are in an archive full of books. One of them has to have a recipe that we can use. Let's go." "What about cleaning the archive?" Norbert asked. "We can clean as we go, and if we win this tournament, you can sleep in all the classes you want. Remember, if we win, you get an automatic pass for the semester. Now search! We lost a lot of time with that assembly." Norbert looked on the higher shelves and Grimwick scanned the lower shelves. They looked through the books for a while in silence until Norbert let out an explanation. "No way! It must be our lucky day." Grimwick whipped around. "You found a book that we can use?" Norbert smiled widely and held it out. "Yeah, look at it. Full of recipes that we can use." Grimwick crawled up Norbert's robes and looked at the book. "Delectable eggless chocolate brownies? Yeah, sounds great. We gotta try it." "Hey, Norbert." "Yeah, Grimwick?" "You're an idiot." Norbert replied with something, but Grimwick didn't hear. Over Norbert's curly hair, Grimwick spotted a book on the top shelf. The spine read Explosive Concoctions and Smelting Metals. Grimwick climbed over Norbert's head and grabbed the book. Thumbing through the pages, he smiled. Yes, this should do. Take a few creative liberties and we should be able to melt that lock and most of the door along with it, too." Most of the kitchens and laboratories were occupied on prep day, but no student wanted to work in the chilly, stained room that was formerly Professor Crinkle's. Most of Professor Crinkle's possessions had been cleared out, but the room had an odd aura and an awful smell. Archmage Turnbill didn't want to alarm any of the students or faculty body, so he had told them all that Crinkle just retired without notice. Still, most of the students' professors thought the classroom was bad luck and stayed away. What didn't help was due to the explosion that Grimwick had caused, the room still smelled of enough chilies to make one's eyes water. But it was the only lab still available, and the pair doubted anyone else would let them work alongside them. So they pinched their nose and went to work. Grimwick brewed an explosive potion while Norbert made some chocolate brownies. Once their respective creations were finished, they rushed and got their potion to registration with a few minutes to spare. Luckily, it was Nickel and another professor checking the submissions. Nickel smiled at seeing Norbert. "Hello, Norbert and Grimwick. Not much time to spare, but I'm glad you made it on time. And I'm glad to see that you entered this tournament, Norbert." Norbert smiled too. "Glad to see you too, Professor Nickel. I'm glad to see you moving about." Nickel handed Norbert an envelope. "You'll be in Group 5. I helped design this challenge myself, and I'm excited to see what you created. And I suspect Grimwick helped too?" Grimwick wanted to say something snarky, but Nickel risked his life to protect Grimwick a few nights ago, and his wishes of good luck actually felt genuine. Something foreign to Grimwick and Norbert alike. The following day came and Norbert and Grimwick went to their designated waiting area. When they arrived, the room was packed with other students waiting their turn. Most of the students were reading textbooks or talking amongst themselves. Norbert didn't bring any books, just the brownies that he had made. Norbert found an open seat and sat down. One of the students he sat next to stood up and moved to another seat. Grimwick hopped up and took it. "Yes. I hate sitting on the stone-cold floor. First thing I'm doing when I conquer this realm. No more stone flooring. Or maybe heated flooring." Grimwick began to ramble to himself about his illusions of world dominance. Luckily, only Norbert knew Grimwick's true form. Every other student was just being annoyed by cats' meows. Norbert turned to his neighbor who was studying a book. "Do you want a brownie?" They shook their head. Norbert shrugged and extended his plate towards the other nearby students. The other students just lifted their books in front of their face. Just as rejection was beginning to set in for Norbert, a familiar voice came from behind. "I'll try one," Penelope said, coming into view. "But a tiny one, please. I'm a little nervous." Norbert held out his plate, and he noticed that Penelope reached for one of the largest ones. Her eyes lit up. Norbert, this is fantastic. I love the gooey chocolate and the little hint of heat." Norbert could feel his face pinch into a smile. Penelope reached out for another one, still going for one of the bigger pieces. "I guess if you two had some time to make brownies, you figured out the solution in no time at all, huh? So you found the flaw in the lock, too?" Norbert and Grimwick exchanged glances. Penelope leaned in. "The false lead and the fake information in the lock's components?" Grimwick nodded. Yeah, we figured it out. But what do you think it was?" Penelope whispered. "Well, everyone's had their potions submitted now, so I guess it's alright. But no amount of fire or heat can melt the lock or door. But the red herring was the troll's nails. By using spring water as the base of any potion, you could counteract the toughness of the troll's nails. Basically, when spring water hits the lock, it'll just simply melt away. I bet most students will try to blow the lock or melt the door. It won't work. No amount of heat can do that. It's kind of clever when you think about it. But I still wanted to set the best time, so I infused mine with some extra soap to expedite the reaction." Norbert looked alarmed towards Grimwick. Grimwick's face twitched a little bit. "Well, good thing we weren't fooled by something so simple." Penelope smiled. "I'm glad to hear that. I hope to face you two in the tournament. This first round was easy enough, but I wonder what Vine has cooked up for the second stage. She created that test herself and has been very secretive about it. She's been leaving Red and mine's combat training to make the preparations. She's even come back bruised." Proctor came in. "Penelope Crest?" Her eyes lit up. "Wish me luck. See y'all next round." Norbert sighed. "Good luck." Not 30 seconds later, she came back through the door with a wide grin and gave them 2 thumbs up. Norbert smiled for Penelope, but his heart sunk a little. "Hey, Grimwick, we're going to try to blow up the lock, aren't we?" Grimwick growled. "Yeah." Norbert sighed. "Well, I guess we'll be eliminated this round." Grimwick bit his lip. "No, just give the potion a good throw at the door." They both watched as the students were called in. Some left happy, others defeated. Norbert began to fidget and ate the remaining brownies. Soon Norbert was the only one left in the waiting room, so it was no surprise when the proctor called. "Norbert Soot." Norbert stood shivering in front of the panel of 5 professors. Vine, Nickel, and the other 3 professors had very stern faces. Nickel saw Norbert's panic and leaned back a little bit and gave a wink, which calmed Norbert's nerves a little. But then Nickel rejoined the panel of stern faces. Behind the panel was a box of broken locks and a box of pristine locks. Professor Nickel spoke, holding up Norbert's submission. "Norbert, your potion is in a different color than the other students. Care to explain what you created?" Norbert looked down at his plate of brownie crumbs. "Well, I found this recipe for eggless brownies, and I wanted to give them a shot." Nickel interrupted with a smile. "Not the brownies, Norbert. The potion." Norbert blushed. Oh, right. Yeah,
You are more than welcome to what's left. Sorry, I got kind of nervous and I ended up eating
The potion, Mr. Soot, Vine barked. Norbert stood frozen and could not audibly communicate. Grimwick could see that the professors were growing annoyed and Norbert wasn't going to speak any time soon, so Grimwick spoke in a low tone as if providing Norbert a speech to read from. And Norbert snapped out of his nerves and began to repeat after Grimwick. I was cleaning the archives and found a recipe that I thought would work better than what my peers would have concocted. Anyone could have used spring water to counteract the troll's nails, but just to show you how much I've improved as a mage, I wanted to try an advanced recipe. That way you'll see how much better I am than everyone else in the school. You'll be amazed by my intellect, and you all bow to me. Vine was not amused. Luckily, Nickel was. Nickel handed Norbert the potion. Okay, Norbert, here's your potion. You have 2 minutes from when the liquid touches the door to retrieve the item inside the vault. Norbert nodded and stood a few feet from the door. Grimwick nudged his head. Throw it at the door. The whole potion. This isn't a melting elixir. Norbert didn't have time to ask if it wasn't a melting elixir, then what was it? So he gave an underhanded toss and the bottle broke over the lock and oozed down towards the floor. Then the ooze began to sizzle like a fuse. Norbert, Grimwick whispered, we might need a shield. Then an explosion erupted from the door. Debris and dust rushed around the room. Vine waved her hands, capturing the chaos in a spell and sending the dust cloud down one of the corridors. Mr. Soot, you've clearly misunderstood this assignment. Norbert looked to the door. It seemed the same, perhaps even shinier. The other 3 professors nodded in agreement. Nickel just hid behind his hands. Vine came out from behind the judge's desk and walked towards Norbert, who just kept backpedaling. I am constantly surprised by how reckless and how dangerous you are. Norbert closed his eyes and his back was now against the vault. Just as he touched the vault, it made a creaking sound. Vine heard the creak and stopped yelling. Norbert backed away from the vault door as the creaking got louder. Eventually the vault door crashed to the floor. A few feet behind was a candy wrapped in golden paper. Norbert stepped on the door and retrieved it. Vine's eyebrows twitched. Her hand was extended from pointing, so Norbert placed the candy in her hand. Here you are, Professor. I think I've had enough sweets for today. Nickel laughed. Ha ha, with 30 seconds to spare. Very impressive, Norbert. All the mages so far have either tried to break the lock or melt the vault door. No one thought to knock down the entire door. Congrats, Norbert. You've moved on to the next round. The proctor came back in and ushered Norbert towards the door. When Grimwick turned around, he could see Nickel and the other professors were examining the fallen door. Meanwhile, Vine clutched the candy in her fist. Chocolate ooze dripped from her grip. She stared at Grimwick, who just in turn gave her a smile in one of his very crude gestures. And up next in the Grimwick the Demon Cat, Chapter 16, Maze of Screams.